And next up, we have Jeff Huckaby. Jeff Huckaby is the retail lead at Tableau. A lot of Tableau folks this afternoon getting some good insight into their products, their services, and so on and so forth. Welcome, Jeff. How you doing?
Doing well, thank you.
How you dealing with the rigmarole of, I know they're keeping you guys busy.
Yeah, very busy, but it's very rewarding. A lot of great stories from some of our retail customers. So.
Cool. So can you tell us a little bit for our viewers what you do exactly and what your customers expect from you guys and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So from a retail perspective, I actually work with our marketing team and sales team and also our customers.
Yep.
And I've got a unique position that I get to work with our retail customers and ensure that they're having success. So it's a very fun position for myself, and we've got some great customers, so it makes it a great position.
Cool. Yeah, retail is a big use of Tableau. We see it all over the place. What are some common scenarios that folks come to you with and say, we're trying to solve this problem, and Tableau just knocks it out of the park for them?
Right. You know, it's great because we've got very small mom and pop, and then we've got many of the largest, retail customers in the world that use Tableau. So the use cases, are increasing sales, reducing cost, increasing profitability, helping to increase customer satisfaction.
Yep.
And then the supply chain side of things. Helping from efficiencies. We heard a great story earlier yesterday from Cisco about how they use Tableau to, for labor cost.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so it's phenomenal, the different use cases. Everything from fraud detection, and also heard another story the other day that we had a large retailer identified a very large amount of money of accounts payable that they didn't realize that they even had. And they were able to they identified it very quickly in Tableau, and they were actually able to collect on that, I think it was within 45 days. So it's just phenomenal.
Holy cow. So what can retailers, how can they better serve their customers with access to their data? Obviously, if they gave them visible, that would be really nice too. But what are some of the ways that a retailer can make their data available to the customer and help the customer experience?
Well, there's really been a explosion of data over the last, 10, 15 years. And, it's very interesting. There's a lot of touch points from the customer today.
Yep.
Through social media. But even the data, the purchase activity, you can do a lot, and it's very powerful. You can see what types of styles people like, the sizes people like, and then all the different geographies. Consumers across the globe respond differently to different colors and styles and shapes. So, be able to analyze that data very quickly helps, like a merchandising team know exactly what they need to put into a retail store. And then you can also analyze the data from a customer experience perspective, from survey data, things of that nature. And then you can help craft how the retail world is providing new services and features to customers. So.
Got it. And Tableau is one of these tools that when you give it to the customer, they can really kind of blow you away with how they use it and the scenarios they come with to analyze and so on and so forth. Would you have any examples of that? Like a customer was given your product and they came back and you were like, wow, that is extremely innovative. I
heard actually just at launch a couple hours ago, we had a great conversation during our retail breakout, and had a customer said, you know what, we use this to do, a very large customer looked at their IT assets.
Okay. And
it would provide a level of transparency of, how new some of the assets were, how old they were, and it helped them gain attention and traction from the business side. And so that was a pretty phenomenal use case that I hadn't heard at that point. I've heard a very interesting case from a fraud detection. And instead of actually looking at a sample set, let's say like invoices from an audit perspective, now they're able to look at the entire data set of all the invoices and very quickly see the outliers and then focus on those. So it helps speed up audit, help reduce basically audit cost, and they were able to do it with a much finer granularity to see if there was any irregularities during the audit. So that was a kind of a fringe, not a fringe use case, but an interesting use case from a retail perspective.
Right. And if you had any customers, with that, we just learned about Kmeans clustering yesterday in the keynote, and some of these features that you might have had to go hire a data scientist, and you still may have to, obviously, once you get past the initial stuff.
Right.
But if some customers, come back to you and said, we were able to save on HR costs so much because you guys gave us so much more of the information that those assets would have been kicking out, or they've got existing folks that they can reuse in a more creative aspect and solve new problems. Do you have any stories around that?
Yeah, so I'll take, just because the example was clustering.
Yep.
Clustering is a very, very powerful tool within retail.
Yep.
And the reason why, a lot of time retailers will examine store performance based on their geographic alignment, usually divisions, regions, and that's definitely one way to look at it. But a very effective way to do that is look at by clustering the data and picking out the clusters that actually matter. So like square footage, because a lot of retailers, they don't have the same exact store square footage, size, shape. And so then that means the products on the inside, they don't follow a consistent path.
Got it.
And so clustering actually allows you, and it's phenomenal that it's in the tool, and it's going to be very handy for retailers. But this is a real life use case where different clustering algorithms allowed for a retailer to be able to tell their store managers that a product was up on the shelf at the wrong spot. So it's a very powerful algorithm that you can use, and then you can start seeing gross profit outliers and then things like that. And part of the story was it was a grocery retailer had put pemmican teriyaki flavored beef jerky up on the shelf, put it up on the shelf wrong. And there was a huge box of Slim Jims in front of it. It'd been like that for a couple months, and that's what the clustering algorithm actually helped.
This was selling like hotcakes, and now nobody's buying
and then,
it.
So it switched around, and then all of a sudden the sales shot back up to where it was with the cluster group. So, clustering is very powerful, and now to think that customers can do that in just a couple clicks, that's going to be very, very popular, I believe, in our retail community. So.
That's incredible. How granular have customers? I mean, that is pretty down to the weeds to be able to say that sort of stuff.
Sure.
Do you have other industries where they have done something like that? How granular have people gotten to this? Like, a product should be moved over 3 inches, or I don't know.
It's product placement matters a whole lot, right? Because you've got eye level. I heard a very interesting story yesterday about people use Tableau to do a time series of when they were selling the data throughout the course of the day. And they saw that very early in the morning, they had a lot of sales from the bottom of the shelf. And they realized that they had a lot of elderly employees that were actually, or not employees, but elderly customers that were there early in the morning, and they were shopping toward the bottom of the shelf. So it's very, it's the psychology behind, color, shape, size, and where that at is very fascinating.
Right.
And so people are able to see correlations in data that they normally couldn't see before through, grid-based data in a spreadsheet. And so, that's where part of the power of Tableau really shines through from a retail perspective.
Very cool. And I've got a tough question for you. I apologize. It's just my brain going crazy.
No problem.
Have any customers taken data that has come through Tableau or just through their own systems? Any of your customers, have you seen them sort of maybe not completely transform where the data is the product, but it starts becoming a significant revenue stream that they can share with others? I can imagine, a store like Kmart or whoever. Obviously, they've done this years ago, where which shelves matter and which ones cost more and so forth. But something like that in perhaps another industry where that data wasn't there before, and when they were able to get it, they either were able to sell it to other folks, or it became a major differentiator for them themselves.
Yeah, where you kind of see that kind of real sharing of data from a retail perspective is there's entities that will buy your data from you.
Yep.
And then they'll basically take your company out of the equation. So then like if you're in a department store, sector of retail, you can actually see how you're doing, let's say in, men's shirts. And then at that point, you can see how other people are doing. So, that's powerful information. So that's kind of, basically being able to sell data and be able to use that in return, which is at an industry level. So you can do a good job of actually benchmarking yourself. I'm trying to think if there's and probably the other place where you see that is you also see through large retailers, they have a lot of vendors. They buy products from a lot of different vendors. So see more of some vendors getting rebates, getting a little larger rebates for sharing data with those vendors,
I see.
or it's just part of their collaboration to maximize sales for both that vendor and the retailer as well. So that's where you see a lot of that data sharing that will go on. So maybe it's not directly sold, but that data is actually collaborated upon. And the companies that are doing it very well are all in the single version of the truth.
Okay.
And that's actually, I've heard a couple retailers say that they're actually going to engage with Tableau online.
Okay.
So that they can actually share that. They don't need to worry about the infrastructure, and they can quickly share that information, collaborate on that information, essentially on the same platform.
Very, very cool. So that is definitely one of the trends that seems like it's in play right now. What are some other, how is the space changing from a data perspective right now, and what do you see in a couple of years?
Yeah, so there's been a tremendous increase in data volume,
Yep.
And so, retailers have, particularly some traditional retailers have, really seen that technology can help them.
Yep.
And so there's a lot from ERP systems to point of sale systems. And then, a few years ago, retailers really started to look at, change. There's a term in retail called omni-channel.
Omni-channel?
Yes.
Okay.
And so what that is traditional retail has always been product-centric. If you think about it, the product's in the middle,
Yep.
and if a retailer has a great product and they have a great price, and they can put it on promotion, and they've got a good place to say on a shelf for it, the thought was, the customer's going to come, okay? And so with advent of really mobile buying, online buying, a lot of the technology and kind of where we're going as a society, omnichannel puts the customer in the center.
I see.
Right? And so now, but that has far-reaching impact throughout a retail organization. So now your supply chain is impacted. And a lot of retailers now are actually doing store fulfillment if they don't have it in their, let's say, their website, their e-commerce fulfillment center. They've been able to use their store distribution center to actually fulfill orders from their physical store.
Right.
So that, that's a big change. And that's what retailers are dealing with now, because it's an influx of technology and new data points that are coming online, and then new capability, because the expectation of a customer is now they want to shop however they want to. A lot of people, a lot of physical in-store brick and mortar purchases originate. The number I saw the other day was either from Google or Gartner. I think it was 67% of all purchases start out on the mobile handheld.
Really?
And also, and it may be research.
Sure.
And so customers are coming into stores smarter because they're able to do all that research. And for large retailers, that can be a large problem, because you may have, 10 billion SKUs in a very large, let's say, department store, or, Home Depot or Lowe's. And the expectation from a customer is they've done their research when they've walked in.
Right.
And if you, as that employee, don't know enough about it, that can lead to frustration.
Right.
So, the whole omni-channel, thing, and that's why now you see a lot of interaction and merging of channels between mobile and online and store, and ordering online and picking up in store. And I think that's going to progress on. But now with sensor technology as well, that's kind of, the next wave, which creates more data.
Yep.
But that also allows for a greater level of personalization for customers. And so, that's going to be very interesting as, both you and I are, marketed or targeted. And now when you walk into a store, and if you really like, Magnani shoes, and you walk by and all of a sudden now your phone lights up and you didn't buy, you kind of know that from the sensor. Okay, how do I entice you to walk right back and pick that up? Maybe those shoes are not on sale, but if you're there and I realize that you just walked by, maybe I ping your phone with 10% off to see if I can get you back to make that purchase. And
Absolutely.
So that's what we're doing, is more and more customization, which leads to more and more data. It's really exponential at that point. So companies are going to have to have to control that data.
Yep.
They're going to have to bring that data in, make sense of it, and do that with a high degree of confidence.
Absolutely. And it's always been, I think retail has always been, at least my understanding, pretty fragmented. Like you had your point of sale systems, you had your ERP systems, nobody talked to each other, right? And it was always a difficult thing to pull this data together.
Yeah.
I would imagine that's another big area where you guys have really shined. You just plug it in and you can pull the data from all the sources. Do you have any customers that didn't like build a data lake prior and came to you and you sort of?
Yeah, actually, the concept of data lake, there's a few organizations that have it.
Okay.
But we still have, from a retail perspective, the maturity is here to here. I mean, it's a huge gap.
Right.
And there's still a lot of fragmentation. There's still a lot of ERP systems, that are brand A, and then different point of sale systems that are brand D.
Everything.
And that's kind of where we're positioned is we can help retailers with the legacy data sources.
Yep.
We can federate that. We can help bring that data. We can make sense of it. But then, there's a lot of retailers too that are, starting to get very serious about Hadoop, getting serious about cloud technology.
Yep.
Security was a massive concern. And over the last couple of years, you've really started to see retailers realize that, maybe the people that have, very good cloud infrastructures, maybe, their security is probably better than ours. Because that was the number one concern.
Right.
And now the realization is, hey, they do security better than us. It's not always the case, and that's not a generalization, but that's why I think you're seeing more and more people go to the cloud.
Right.
Which is powerful. But so I think that we're very well positioned from that we can take your legacy, we can take your multiple ERP systems, we can help you federate that, make sense of the data, so you understand your data. And then, but we've got, a lot of really good data connectors to connect to,
40 plus,
Apache,
I believe,
Apache Spark, things of that nature that people are really now just starting to see. So, kind of the other area of where I see people in the future as well is the companies in retail that have done a really good job with advanced analytics.
Okay.
It's just part of their ecosystem. And it's not just a separate, wing of the company,
everything.
but it starts to be part of their DNA.
Cool.
And, and it's to the point where it's communicated to people on the ground, people at the stores, people that communicate with the customers or online, through their, dynamic websites. And so that's where I see, because there's a huge, I think, maturation. I think the retail industry needs to go from that perspective to kind of make it more to a commodity as opposed to, a few people doing it or, different groups and different teams doing it in isolation. So.
Very cool. And what you obviously caught the keynote yesterday, or you already knew about all the features before they came.
Yes.
For retail-specific customers, what did you, when you were looking at that, what were some things that you cherry-picked out and said, "Wow, that's really gonna help my group a lot"?
So one of the areas which was the, being able to write and create a dashboard,
Yep.
and be able to consume that to, on an iPad, but also now on a smartphone. That's going to be massive for retail.
Yeah.
And and that means that's going to be less development cost.
Yep.
Because basically, Tableau is a tool that you can do things very, very quickly.
Yep.
And now you have another screen that you can develop for automatically. And from a retail perspective, iPads are awesome, but they're very expensive if you have a ton of employees that you're going to deploy that to. So everybody has smartphones, essentially.
Yeah.
Right. And now you have a communication medium, which and that opens up the door to, if you work for a retailer and you have a quota, let's say, and you work at Home Depot, very quickly now you could look and you could see, without any additional investment, you could get that on your phone, and I think that's going to be very, very powerful. I'm a very big believer in mobility in store.
Cool.
To help from an efficiency perspective, and then we've already touched on the advanced analytics capability, outlier detection.
Yep.
And then the clustering is huge as well. So.
Very, very cool stuff. Jeff, thank you so much. We ran out of time before we ran out of questions, but thank you for being here and thank you for answering ours.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks a bunch.